Everybody ready? Call our meeting to order. Please rise for the invocation, followed by the pledge of allegiance to the flag of our country. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the opportunity we have together here this evening. Lord, we just ask a special prayer goes out to all those that are suffering from the 2 hurricanes. Please be with them, Lord, and help them recover and comfort them in this time. Lord, we ask that you bless this city commission, give us the knowledge and the wisdom to make the decisions that are in the best interest of our community. Please look over our staff, Lord, and keep all of them safe also. For all these things we ask in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First on the agenda is approval of minutes from our meeting on September the 26th. They have been distributed. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, we need a motion. We've got a motion to approve, I believe. Do we have a second? We won't pick on you. We have a second?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We have 3 proclamations here this evening. The first will be for Down Syndrome Awareness Day of October 21st. The second is Fire Prevention Week. And the third is Week of the Family. So, Commission, we will go down. Proclamation 24-10. Whereas Down syndrome is a genetic disorder affecting 1 in over 700 babies, or around 6,000 births per year in the United States. And whereas Down syndrome results from an individual having a full or partial extra copy of chromosome number 21, a naturally occurring chromosomal arrangement, and is one of the most common chromosomal conditions. And whereas individuals living with Down syndrome are independent, valuable, and active members of our communities, participating with dignity in a wide range of educational, occupational, social, and recreational activities. And whereas October the 21st represents the uniqueness of the 3 copies of the chromosome 21 and celebrates individuals with Down syndrome. And whereas October 21st represents the uniqueness of the 3 copies of this chromosome 21 and celebrates individuals with Down syndrome, said it twice. Whereas this year marks the first annual City of Winter Garden Down Syndrome Day, supporting individuals with Down syndrome and those who advocate for them. And whereas individuals with disabilities have the right to be treated fairly and have the same opportunities as everyone else, working alongside others to improve their lives. Therefore, it is my great pleasure and privilege as the mayor of the City of Winter Garden to proclaim Monday, October the 21st, 2024, as Down Syndrome Awareness Day in the City of Winter Garden, and urge all citizens to take this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Thank you. And if you'd like to say something.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen McNeil, and this is my daughter, Simone Atkins. She was born with Down syndrome, and she was the first young lady to win homecoming queen at West Orange High School with a Down syndrome king. So, a little short story about my pregnancy with Simone. When I found out that she had Down syndrome, the doctor wanted me to abort the baby. Okay, so I was 7 months pregnant at the time. So I got so mad at this doctor, I went to another doctor. When I went to the other doctor, he told me, when God gives you lemons, make lemonade. So that's what I did. I promised the Father in heaven that I would love her and take care of her with all my heart. It's an honor to have a daughter or child with Down syndrome, because they can do anything that anybody else can do. Years ago, when, I don't know if you ever heard of this place called Sunnyland, they used to put Down syndrome people in institutions, but not anymore. We love our children with Down syndrome, and we cherish them. And we want to thank the city of Winter Garden for proclaiming October 21st is Down Syndrome Awareness Day. Because of the storm, we have to celebrate it afterwards, but next year we're going to do it big. So again, we want to thank you, City of Winter Garden, the mayor, and all the commissioners, and everybody that's on our team in Winter Garden. And let's do it. Let's stand up for Down syndrome and support them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Proclamation 24-11. Whereas Fire Prevention Week has been nationally observed since 1925, making it the longest running public health observance in the United States. And whereas this goal is to draw attention to fire safety by educating businesses and citizens to drastically decrease casualties caused by fires, which supports the City of Winter Garden Fire Rescue Department's core priority of fire prevention safety. And whereas the 2024 Fire Prevention Week theme, Back to the Basics, reinforces the fire department's efforts to educate our businesses and staff to be alert to any unsafe practices, respond promptly to fire alarm activations, and to evacuate immediately when alarms sound. And whereas this October, Winter Garden Fire Rescue will continue to provide fire safety education to businesses and city staff members with the goal of promoting fire safety practices for not only within our community, but also through public relation events in hopes of reducing the threat of damage and injuries from preventable fires. And whereas ensuring safe, healthy, and inclusive learning and working environments is an established goal within the fire department's plan, and therefore it is my great pleasure and privilege as the mayor of the city of Winter Garden to declare the week of October the 6th to the 12th, 2024 is Fire Prevention Week.
This initiative, it's one that's near and dear. I've been in the fire service for over 25 years and still got gas in the tank to make sure that we, each day that I rise to make a difference and try to save lives. So this is a great initiative, one that I, again, take very personally. But Chief Diane's efforts to push it forward to bring me here for this. I just want to say thank you. And
Thank
to the
you.
citizens.
Well, thank you. We'll take a moment to thank all of our fire departments because we have an excellent fire department.
We'll have first reading and public hearing of proposed ordinances, ordinance 24-37, 24-38, and 24-39.
Yes, Mayor. Ordinance 24-37, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, providing for the annexation of certain additional lands, generally described as approximately 0.79 plus minus acres located at 1302 East Fuller's Cross Road, north of Corsino Street, south of East Fuller's Cross Road, east of Malcolm Point Drive, and west of East Crown Point Road into the City of Winter Garden, Florida, redefining the city boundaries to give the city jurisdiction over said property, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. And ordinance 24-38, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, amending the future land use map of the Winter Garden Comprehensive Plan by changing the land use designation of real property, generally described as approximately 0.79 plus minus acres located at 1302 East Fuller's Cross Road, north of Corsino Street, south of East Fuller's Cross Road, east of Malcolm Point Drive, and west of East Crown Point Road, from Orange County low-density residential to city low-density residential, providing for severability, providing for an effective date. And ordinance 24-39, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, rezoning real property generally described as approximately 0.79 plus minus acres located at 1302 East Fuller's Cross Road, north of Corsino Street, south of East Fuller's Cross Road, east of Malcolm Point Drive, and west of East Crown Point Road, from Orange County A-1 Citrus Rural District to City R-1 Single Family Residential District, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a request for annexation, future land use, and zoning for a 0.79 acre property located at 1302 East Fuller's Cross Road. If approved, the property would be annexed into the city, assigned a low-density residential future land use designation, and rezoned to R1 single-family residential district. After approval, the applicant intends to build a new single-family home on the property and hook up to city services. So with that, staff recommends approval of ordinances 24-37, 38, and 39.
Questions from the commission? Well, this is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and we need a motion.
Move for approval of ordinance 24-37, 24-38, and 24-39 with a second reading public hearing scheduled for November 14th, 2024.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye opposed, motion carried unanimously. Ordinance 24-40.
Yes, sir. Ordinance 24-40, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, amending Chapter 6 Alcoholic Beverages of the City of Winter Garden Code of Ordinances, amending Section 6-1 of the City Code defining restaurants, amending and clarifying Section 6-2 of the Code governing business establishment locations near a church or school, amending and clarifying Section 6-4 of the City Code governing hours of sale and service of alcoholic beverages at establishments within the city, modifying the time periods that alcoholic beverages are authorized to be sold, served, and consumed, requiring restaurants to discontinue selling and serving alcoholic beverages when food service is not available via on-site food preparation facilities, amending and clarifying Section 6-5 of the City Code governing possession, consumption, or display of alcoholic beverages on public property or on premises of unlicensed commercial establishments, amending Section 6-7 of the City Code governing package store separation requirements to create an exception for incidental package sales associated with a grocery store, and adding a new Section 6-9 to the City Code to outline policies and procedures relating to a new extension of hours permit for alcohol sales, providing for codification, severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. The city is requesting approval of ordinance 24-40 to amend City Code of Ordinance Chapter 6 on alcoholic beverages. This ordinance is very broad in its scope, and it does cover a lot of ground, so I am going to start by giving a hopefully brief, or at least as brief as I can, presentation that breaks down the major changes to each section. So the first thing is, I just wanted to go over, I guess, why is the city bringing this forward right now? Why are we proposing ordinance 24-40? The reason why we're proposing to make these changes to the alcohol ordinance, the first couple are more administrative in nature, to make the code more consistent with the city's charter, to make the code more consistent with new state regulations. The state has recently implemented a slate of new regulations, and currently our code is not 100% compliant with those new regulations, so this would bring it into compliance with those. To be more responsive to reported issues related to late night alcohol consumption, which we'll get into in a minute. To provide clearer guidance on other issues related to alcohol sales and consumption. And finally, more at a broad kind of level, is to encourage and maintain the city's quality of life and foster a family-friendly environment throughout the city, while also supporting a thriving business community. So we're trying to very delicately kind of strike that balance. So what are the issues with late night consumption that we've been seeing here at the city? There are issues that are reflected by the number of police calls that we receive at those late night hours. That was part of your agenda package where we included some of those statistics. But it's not just the police calls. There are other issues that are reflected by other forms of evidence that we're receiving, including complaints by residents and visitors, vomit and fluids found outside, prophylactics, undergarments, and other contraband found in public areas, a lot of trash and debris throughout downtown, especially the morning after, and we have ample video footage of illicit and illegal activities from our parking garage and other places within the downtown core. And just to kind of give you an example, here's a quote from, as you know, Laura Cork, who is our parks director. What she said was, "My staff is so accustomed to cleaning up all manner of trash, debris, bodily fluids, and other detritus from late night drinking activities that we don't even think to take photographs for evidence anymore. Many people don't realize that downtown at 8 a.m. is not the same downtown at 5 a.m. when we are faced with cleaning up everything from the night before." And beyond those impacts, there's also some cost implications too to taxpayers. Currently, taxpayers pay approximately $150,000 a year to kind of subsidize those increased patrols that we have to hire for downtown for these late night consumption activities. And these figures that you see on the right are over a 6-month period of expenditures. So now I'm just gonna give a brief overview of the changes to the ordinance section by section. In terms of section 6.1, which is our definitions section, we revised the definition of a restaurant to say that sale and service of alcohol is incidental to selling food and non-alcoholic beverages. Restaurants must have a commercial kitchen with the equipment to prepare full course meals, and a full course meal includes an entree, vegetable or a side, and a non-alcoholic beverage. A restaurant must be able to serve full course meals prepared in the commercial kitchen whenever alcohol is served. However, we did modify this from an earlier version to say that food can be pre-prepared for late night service prior to the kitchen closing. We heard from a lot of the restaurants that it is cost prohibitive to keep a kitchen open at all times, and so as long as they have pre-prepared the food to deploy whenever somebody orders it, that would be an acceptable way to maintain that classification as a restaurant. It also says all restaurants that serve alcohol must derive more than 50% of their sales from the sale of food and non-alcoholic beverages. This is actually consistent with our charter and a lot of our current regulations as well. Restaurants that serve beer, wine, and liquor must provide at least 120 indoor seats, which is consistent with the new state regulations that reduced it from 150, unless they are classified as a fine dining establishment. And this fine dining establishment is a new definition that we added to the code. We lay out what is all involved in being designated as a fine dining establishment. A restaurant must meet at least 4 of the 5 criteria that are laid out. And being designated a fine dining establishment, what that would get you, it would allow a restaurant to use outdoor seating to count towards the minimum 120 seating requirements for liquor sales, whereas now you have to use all indoor seating. Changes to 6.2 are really minor. There are minor text clarifications about when the 1,200-foot distance requirements are applicable, and they're only applicable to bars, not restaurants. Changes to section 6.4 include, this is where you get into the hours of sale. Hours of permitted alcohol sale and consumption change from 7 a.m. until midnight. Currently goes until 2 a.m. This would change into midnight as a base level. But it does specify that alcohol sales and consumption may be permitted from midnight to 2 a.m. if an establishment applies for and receives an extension of hours permit. I'll go into much more detail about the extension of hours permit later in this presentation. It clarifies that requirement for last call is a half hour before required closing time. For places that are required to stop at midnight, the patrons may stay in the establishment. If they are not purchasing or consuming alcohol, they don't necessarily have to close their doors once they are not allowed to serve anymore. All establishments with alcohol serving licenses can serve until 3 a.m. on New Year's Day. Whether or not you have that extension of hours permit, all places would be able to do that. Clarifies that food service requirements cannot be met with meals that have been ordered via delivery or by prepackaged snacks. You can't be classified as a restaurant if you're just ordering in from Uber Eats. Intoxicated persons cannot loiter in and about restaurants or bars. Some more changes to 6.4 include business tax receipts. For new restaurants, they must submit a copy of their menus and seating establishment license from DVPR. For renewing restaurants, each year they must submit a copy of their menus, point of sale receipts, and a summary of the percentage of revenue derived from food and non-alcoholic beverages over the previous 12 months, so we can verify that they're meeting that 50% threshold. And the city's code enforcement board would hear any cases related to revocation or suspension of an establishment's status as a restaurant. Changes to section 6.5. 6.5 is the section that deals with alcohol on public lands. Alcohol may be served on public property if in conjunction with a special event permit. And it does clarify that city commission approval is not required if approved by city staff for city-owned venues such as Tanner Hall or the Pavilion. No businesses shall offer alcohol as an added benefit of another sale or paid service if they don't already have an alcohol license. No business without a state ABT license may sell alcohol unless in conjunction with a special event permit, and the alcohol has to be served by a vendor who has their own catering license, which allows them to sell alcohol as well. And it does make a provision for the Winter Garden Theater is permitted to sell and serve alcohol in conjunction with this specialty state license. Changes to section 6.7 include incidental package sales with grocery stores. Those are now permitted under certain conditions. So if Publix wants to have a kind of a standalone liquor store or package store, they can do so as long as the package sale venue is under the same ownership as the grocery store and they're located within close proximity. Sales of alcoholic beverages must not exceed 10% of the combined revenue of the grocery store and package facility. The package store cannot be open when the grocery store is closed. The package store floor area can't exceed 10% of the grocery store floor area, and the package store must comply with other state laws and city regulations. And finally, we have a new section that we're adding is section 6.9, which deals with, like I mentioned before, the new extension of hours permit. This section establishes a new permit for sales and consumption from midnight into 2 a.m. and this covers the entire city, not just downtown. Applicants would submit an application with a $250 fee. This does need to be renewed annually at time of business tax receipt renewal. A committee of city staff, including the police chief, but other members of staff as well, would review the new and renewing permit applications to determine if an establishment needs to hire any state licensed private security officers or police protection inside and or outside of the facility. The basis for this decision will be drawn from a number of factors relating to maintaining the public safety at those late hours. In terms of suspension or revocation of the extension of hours permit, an extension of hours permit may be suspended or revoked if an establishment repeatedly fails to control certain effects of the late night alcohol consumption. Upon first offense, the establishment may receive a notice of violation from code enforcement, but they will have the opportunity to meet with city staff, discuss what's going wrong, and figure out a mitigation plan to help prevent those instances from happening in the future. If the city determines that the actions taken are sufficient to address these issues, then they would have to amend their permit to include that mitigation plan, and that would not require any sort of hearing for suspension or revocation. And however, if an establishment continues to have issues that go unaddressed, we, city staff may recommend revocation or suspension of the extension of hours permit. However, that would have to be heard in front of the city's code enforcement board or hearing officer. Staff cannot unilaterally revoke somebody's permit. That would have to go through this process, which could ultimately be brought to city commission as the final say in the matter. The city would need to furnish sufficient evidence to prove the issues were the result of the actions that were taken or failed to be taken by the establishment. So the burden of proof is on staff to determine that. If a code board hearing recommends suspension or revocation, the applicant has the option to appeal to city commission, and suspensions would last for a period of 30 days. Revocations would only last the remaining duration of the permit or 6 months, whichever is greater. So there is no permanent revocation of this proposed permit. They always have a chance to reapply. So some frequently asked questions about this new section 6.9, how many businesses would be impacted by the new permit? Currently, there are only 7 establishments citywide that serve alcohol after midnight and would require that extension of hours permit. And how would the city determine if and at what level the police protection is needed? Like I said, there's going to be a committee of city staff. It's based on occupancy types of alcohol license, traffic control, history of previous incidents, and any other relevant public safety factors. And they would have to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis because every case would be different. So I just want to talk a little bit about the process of how we got here to bring this forward tonight. We began drafting this ordinance early this year, and we did start discussions with the business owner and business owners and sent drafts for review earlier in the summer. And we sent over 2,000 businesses copies of the original drafts, and we also kept them informed of any changes or subsequent drafts. And after hearing concerns from restaurants and bar owners about the first draft that we sent out, we actually revised the draft pretty drastically to include this extension of hours permit to ensure businesses were not financially impacted by the required midnight closing. So originally it was just a hard stop at midnight for downtown and surrounding businesses. However, after hearing concerns about how this may financially impact those restaurants and businesses, we pulled that back and offered this method of continuing to serve until 2 a.m. as long as they apply for and receive this permit. And other changes were also made based on feedback we received from businesses, including definitions. Some of them were a little squishy, so we revised them to be more clear. And we revised some sections to be more in conformance with state law, at the advice of our attorneys, etc. So we did bring this ordinance in front of the Planning and Zoning Board on October 7th. They had a chance to review it. We had a long, I think, healthy discussion about it. And at the end of the hearing, they did recommend approval of ordinance 24-40, but they did have some conditions, and so I just wanted to lay those out. The planning and zoning board recommended conditions. Number one is they wanted city staff to meet with the Chamber of Commerce as well as other local businesses to get more input about the effects of this ordinance. And we actually did have that meeting yesterday. We met with several local businesses and restaurant owners to discuss some of their concerns and explore some new, I guess, avenues to comply with that. And they also wanted to change the language to reduce bar restaurant culpability for activities that happen outside the areas that business directly control. They were really concerned about if a so-called bad actor showed up, that the restaurant itself would not be held accountable for someone who just randomly showed up and wanted to start trouble. They wanted to clarify that any potential mitigation plans are only for activities that happen between midnight and 2 a.m. And they wanted to kind of reduce the list of factors that contribute to a quote-unquote strike against the establishment. They wanted to eliminate those that are not directly alcohol-related, and clarify that a strike has to derive by an action that was taken or not taken by the establishment which directly contributed to that outcome. Again, it just goes back to that culpability about when it's the establishment's fault versus when it's just a bad actor. So based on our meeting at the Chamber of Commerce with the businesses and also based on the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Board, staff does have some recommended changes to this ordinance that we are recommending here tonight. And those changes would be, we do want to clarify that the new hours of sale do not apply to package sales. We want to include the option for restaurants to provide an affidavit in lieu of point of sale and percentages for alcohol versus food sales. We heard from a lot of restaurants that this may be something that they're concerned about their competitors getting a hold of their numbers, and that might affect, I guess, their competitive nature in the market. And for the suspension of permits section, they wanted to simplify we're recommending that we simplify the list of violations and clarify that culpability as recommended by the planning board, and institute more of a 3 strikes policy whereby any consecutive 3-month period, the first after hours violation would just be a written warning. The second would require a meeting with city staff and creation of that mitigation plan like we mentioned earlier. And the third violation would lead to a notice of hearing in front of the code enforcement board or hearing officer to consider suspension, revocation, or additional conditions that could be added to the extension of the statute of hours permit to help mitigate any issues. And also other minor text changes as required for clarification and some other things that were brought up by the restaurants and establishments yesterday at our meeting. And so with that, staff feels that ordinance 24-40 encourages, let's go back. Our recommendation is that the process to draft ordinance 24-40 was fair and transparent. Affected businesses were given sufficient time to review and provide comments. We feel the staff was responsive to the feedback received from the businesses, and we changed large sections of this ordinance to address all of those concerns. The ordinance was not targeted towards any specific area or establishment. This would apply citywide, not to any particular area. The regulations, we believe, take a balanced approach to addressing the deleterious effects of late night alcohol consumption. Any potential revocation would result basically in a flagrant kind of disregard for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. It is not the city's intention to start pulling all of these permits or affecting anybody's business. This would have to be pretty egregious of actions by these establishments. And there are a number of mitigatory steps that can be taken to avoid revocation or suspension. And again, there are checks and balances along the way to ensure that there's ample due process. These would not be unilateral decisions by city staff. These would have to go through various boards, including potentially this board here tonight. We believe that this ordinance encourages businesses to self-regulate. Any business that takes a proactive approach to managing those potentially harmful effects of late night alcohol consumption should not be significantly affected by these new regulations. It takes the onus off taxpayers to subsidize these issues. And finally, it ensures we have a process by which we can ensure the city of Winter Garden remains charming, family-friendly, and also ensuring that local businesses can thrive. And because of these reasons, staff recommends approval of ordinance 24-40 with the proposed changes that were outlined by staff. Happy to answer.
Very good, thank you.
Stick around.
Questions from the commission? Or wait. Any questions right now?
I think that, I mean, let's open it up, Mayor, and see.
I'll see if any questions first.
I know.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Kelly. This is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Jack Butler, resident of Winter Garden, 301 Avalon Road, and a local certified planner. When I first saw this ordinance back in August, I was reading the preamble, it sounded like, boy, there's a lot of terrible stuff going on. So I put in a public records request and asked for all of the evidence that supports the statements that the city is receiving consistent complaints from the public, that there's loud and raucous behavior, that there's a shift in patronage from people doing family-oriented things to buying and drinking alcohol, that the city has expended increased resources in the police department as a result of late-night service, and that the overall situation is that an environment inconsistent with the nature of downtown that we all want to preserve is present. I will say at this point that there was no evidence provided. There was no phone log record, there was no email, there was no letter, there was no anything to back up any of the statements that were made on that initial slide. The ordinance, in fact, does not match state law, it conflicts with it. And that the slide that showed the list of all the things like vomit downtown and people doing stuff in the parking garage, there was nothing that said any of that was related to the consumption of alcohol at any time of day or night. Now you've got a police report in there, and in that report, it lists calls for service and the number of cases that were made. The top two locations for calls for service were IG Sushi and Beth's Burger Bar. They both close at 10 p.m. on the weekends, 9 o'clock during the week. The most cases were at Bella Italia, also closes at 9 o'clock during the week and 10 o'clock on the weekends. So this police report doesn't really say anything relative to the reason for having the license premises have different hours of operation. Because of that, I asked in my public records request for all of the actions related to the downtown area, central part of town, which seemed to be the focus at the time. There was one, and that was at a place that had an off-duty police officer present at the time. You also heard it mentioned that we're spending a lot of money on police services. And they provided you a list of the different police officers that work downtown and how much they cost. And on that slide, it claimed that it was costing $150,000 with the implication that that was due to the consumption of alcoholic beverages. But I have here an email from the Office of the Police Chief that says we have no records of cost of increased police patrols or law enforcement actions resulting from the sale and consumption on premises of alcoholic beverages. And when he was asked during the P&Z board meeting to identify a problem business in that regard, he said he could not identify one. Now the ordinance says serving alcoholic beverages after midnight is the problem. But your extended hours permit proposal says that's not the problem. The problem is security at these particular business locations. However, it's been demonstrated through the lack of any evidence to point to that there really is no security issue at these places of business. Plus, I'm concerned that one of the requirements in there to apply for that extended hours thing is that you give up your right to complain about any of the provisions in the ordinance. If it was such a straightforward thing, why would you have to give up those rights? Now, the business impact statement says that 7 businesses were impacted. Earlier, I pointed out that it says It prohibits the sale of beverages, which would include package sales. And the city staff has indicated that they're changing that to show that this only applies to on-premises consumption. But you can still buy it at 7-Eleven or Wawa or any of those places after midnight until 2 a.m. But, so it's on-premises consumption that seems to be the problem, not just that you can buy alcohol between midnight and 2 a.m. Now, the city has the authority to change the hours. I'm not contesting that you can't go from 2 a.m. to midnight, but it does expose the city to potential claims under the Burke-Harris Act, because making that change, you've eliminated a vested right that all the businesses have today. And that results in financial damages that could be subject to recovery by these businesses, because it says in the law, any ordinance that, quote, has directly restricted or limited the use of real property such that the property owner is permanently unable to attain a reasonable investment-backed expectation for the existing use of the real property or a vested right to a specific use of the real property is then a valid claim under the Burke-Harris Private Property Act. Businesses today have the authority to sell alcoholic beverages until 2 a.m. When you remove that, that's a problem. The last thing I want to talk about is state preemption. I actually got an award a couple of years ago for fighting state preemption from the Florida League of Cities. As a home rule hero that they gave out. And so normally I'm against that, but in this case, whether we like it or not, it exists. The state regulates alcoholic beverages and the businesses that sell it. They also define and license restaurants. There are explicit requirements in the Beverage Act that says local governments cannot do certain things. And one of those things they cannot do is regulate the legitimate transactions of a business licensed by the state. The city may not impose restrictions on a lawful business transacted by a state licensed business, and serving food is a lawful transaction. State law prohibits the proposed ordinance content dealing with restaurant beverage service requirements, such as what is on the menu and the nature of how and where the food is prepared. There are other explicit state law prohibitions and constitutional conflicts with most of the provisions. State law, supported by multiple Attorney General opinions and court case precedents, prevents the city also from using the business tax process from enforcing local ordinances. Now, the city attorney will tell you that the city has the discretion to adopt this ordinance. In the last year alone, as an attorney pro se, I have litigated 4 cases dealing with state preemption of local ordinances. They weren't exactly on this topic, so I spent about 50 hours researching the issue related to alcoholic beverage licensing. And I was able to compile this notebook that lists court case precedents, Attorney General opinions, statutes, and other references to support the opinion that the state preempts most of this regulation. I have in this hand everything that's been provided to me that argues the opposite. There is, of course, no requirement that a restaurant be defined as a restaurant in the city of Winter Garden. All the existing businesses can stop claiming to be restaurants under city code. And because of the wording of Chapter 6 now, it doesn't affect their ability to continue operation. And it won't affect their license from the state to continue to operate as a restaurant or sell alcoholic beverages. So you can't really get around, I don't believe, even if state preemption, forget that there's still the issue of definitions that you explicitly say right now, if you don't satisfy the requirements for a restaurant, then you become a package sales facility, but it does not impact your renewal of the business tax receipt. So it would act then to preclude other businesses from locating in the area, but it would not change the operations of existing businesses. Thank you for listening to what I have to say, and good luck on this.
Thank you.
Charles Roper, 1011 West Bay Street, Winter Garden. Wanted to thank the city staff for the meeting that we had yesterday. It was a good meeting, it was a productive meeting. I am still concerned and cannot support the ordinance as it is written and presented in the agenda at this moment. And we discussed a lot of those issues at our meeting yesterday. Kelly did mention and bring up several of those items, so I'm appreciative of her bringing up those items in her presentation. I'm very anxious to see the revisions that are being proposed based on our quite extensive conversations yesterday, right at 2 hours, which is what we budgeted at the time, and we took every minute of it. The changes are being driven by several things, which Kelly mentioned. We got corporate businesses in the town that are worried about competitors getting their public information being submitted. It's one of the items being addressed. We appreciate that. I actually shared our business's information with staff yesterday, saying, hey, here's what our report would look like. And that was from January to date, showing that we're in compliance. And staff accepted that as, yep, this is a good report. Yep, everything's good. So I wanted to make sure that where we stood and what the staff was requesting was good, but I also expressed, I didn't want that part of the public record. It's our private business. And staff hadn't really thought about that. We discussed it for quite a while. It looks like we may have an acceptable compromise on that. There's several other items that were listed. Kelly's mentioned most of them, but not all of them. So I would very much like to see the next draft expedited and be able to review that well before the next reading to determine whether I am still opposed to this ordinance or whether we are amenable on this ordinance. Thank you.
Eddie Gaunt, Matthews Steakhouse. None of this really has anything to do with me on either side, but I'm kind of stuck in the middle as a restaurant that qualifies for what nobody's disagreeing about, from the Ropers to anyone on the panel, I don't think. So this is getting a little sticky from my perspective over here in the audience, and you know, I just somehow would love my little restaurant to kind of get out. Excuse me. There is an exception that can be made for my restaurant that's not a part of this. If this is gonna take months, if we keep extending the meetings, it will impact 10 families that work for me, my family, mightily. So if anything else, take this into consideration when you hear all of it. And if we can somehow figure out how to make this work apart from this, if that's what it takes, that's what I want to hear. So.
Yeah, and 148 Roper Drive, Winter Garden, 34787. I think it'd be real easy. All we gotta do is adopt the 12 o'clock and be done with it. Then you wouldn't have to worry about any ordinances. But when I'm looking at that, there again, I could go through the whole history of sitting on the first redevelopment of Winter Garden and everything else, and go all the way up through being a board member on the chamber, YMCA, code enforcement, and then 14 years on the city of Winter Garden commission.
Forgot P&Z, Bob.
Yeah, even a short time on the P&Z before it came. And family-friendly community, drinking alcohol was never a part of what you considered family-friendly. It wasn't when the theater was being put together, and it wasn't whenever the restaurants were coming to Winter Garden. And we've accepted a lot of great restaurants in Winter Garden, and all of them came here under the assumption that 12 o'clock was whenever we closed alcohol. And somewhere along the line, we granted the 2 o'clock in the morning. That was not because I thought it was a good idea, that's for sure. I personally feel like anybody that wants to drink after 12 o'clock at night should go home, go to their backyard with a bunch of people and enjoy themselves and have the rest of it there. But as far as downtown, where the public can still be walking around with their families or whatever, maybe they came to a show at the Garden Theater or whatever the case may be, I think that's wonderful. I also don't like to see the city being threatened with lawsuits. I think that's pretty petty. But, because the commission does have a lot of power, and I think Mr. Erdman would be glad to express what those are. As far as the findings from Mr. Graham, with the police department, I happened to see ones that did show that a lot of people were being arrested after hours and outside one bar in specific. So anyway, and the stuff that was going on inside the parking garage. And, I don't understand that also when you're bringing in outside security, you don't know who those, I don't care if they got a license or not, you don't know what kind of people they're bringing in. And do you want our public to be put with some guy that, has a little image that he wants to bolster and a couple of words are said back and forth between, and he's going to bust everybody on the sidewalk, throw them down, handcuff them, and this is your lifetime sentence been here. Do you want to get that kind of reputation for a city? I think if people want to drink after 12 o'clock at night, go over to Ocoee, go to Mount Dora, go to Apopka, go to Orlando. Leave Winter Garden alone. I think we've got a reputation of having a family friendly, and I'd like to see the restaurants that come in keep that. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Very quick. Hi, everybody. Becky Rover. I just want to make a comment in relationship to two points that were made. One, I hope that we can help usher through what Matthew's Steakhouse needs in order to get their competitive, equal playing field for a very fine restaurant that we have in town. So, if there are some sticking issues that we talked about yesterday in the conversation or other things that are going through, let us give the opportunity to continue to work through those so we have an agreeable direction for all the businesses concerned. But let's try and get that portion of it taken care of, because I think it's important for them. And I think as a small business owner, we have lots of challenges to manage every day in terms of staying successful. And I just want to let them know and let you guys know that we're fully supportive of that, and I hope that will be worked out. And then the other thing that I want to sort of comment about, and it's what I feel very passionately about, I feel so awkward when I hear people talking about the family-friendly stuff that's going on and all the families that are out at midnight. They're not out at midnight walking around on the sidewalks. I'm so confused by that. I just don't get it. But what I would say about it is that we have some of these businesses that are open in the late night hours who are providing social spaces that are quite different than the social spaces of my youth in Winter Garden. My youth in Winter Garden, the social spaces were your churches and your Mason Lodge and, you know, the different social spaces now. I know who's at my business, Pilar's at midnight. I'm there often. I'm there usually 4 nights a week, and oftentimes 3 of them at least, I'm there at midnight. I know who's coming in at midnight. And with all respect to Bob, it's a different generation of people. These are people who have served you all day long at Urban Flats or at Enchilada or someplace like that. These are the people that are coming in their chef's outfits and their waiter outfits, and these are the people that it's their 5 o'clock, and their 5 o'clock starts at 10 or 11 at night. And I know we've worked some figures out and some things out so that the 2 o'clock time frame can still be maintained. I just think we've gone through an awful lot of, this thing started out at 4 or 5 pages long and it's now 17 pages long. It's really expanded from a little mountain, a little molehill to quite a big mountain. And I just think that, I'm not quite sure exactly how that mountain got there, but I just want to defend and stand up for the people who are out at 11 and 12 o'clock. And there's the very first paragraph, I think it says something about some kind of behavior, disruptive behavior or something like that. And honestly, I'm out at midnight. I'm not up at 8 a.m. I don't go out for breakfast, but this is where my social time is, and I think it's really important as part of what we've built. There's only 7 businesses that stay open after midnight out of the 1,000 businesses that are in Winter Garden, or how many of it. It just seems like, we've built a little bit of a mountain out of a molehill here, and I think, just take into consideration all the constructive conversations we've had about this and move forward in a way that allows the social spaces and to be for those people who are not the same families that we had here 11 years ago or 160 years ago when my family moved here or whatever. So anyway, thank you for all the work that we've been doing on this, and I hope that we'll keep all of the citizens of Winter Garden in mind in this process too, because I know there's a lot of young people that need their 5 o'clock, whether it's at 11 o'clock or 5 o'clock. So thank you.
Marty O'Connor, 900 Kershaw Drive. One thing I want to make sure you as a commission realize with this is that if people are dead set at being out late at night, they're going to go home because of this, not necessarily home, because they come out downtown and they walk. It's a safe community, and they walk downtown, go have some drinks. They are going to go home, and they're going to go get in a vehicle, and they will go drive somewhere, whether it be a Coe, Apopka, Claremont. And that will increase the police statistics across the board and increase problems across the city and other communities, which no one wants. Okay? One point. Is this just comments, or can there also be questions and answers?
Comments.
Oh, so there's no questions allowed. Okay,
No,
it's very,
you can ask questions.
it's very unique, but there's no answers that occur.
Well, it depends. I mean, what's your question? You have 3 minutes, so you can go, you can.
Okay.
What's your question?
It's very interesting. I mean, I'll echo Roseanne's comment, that a lot of people do come out to Pilar's late at night to go listen to music because it's a unique situation, right? And they don't necessarily drink. And it's a very inviting, friendly forum for that, and they bring in unique music that happens, right? And we saw whatever statistics were presented forward. However, there was no actual representation behind any of that with the parking garage as to whether they were actually caused by after midnight or due to drunk and disorderly conduct. Right? It was just that after the morning, we saw this happen. That's what was presented.
Yep, I said I can't answer that, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think the commission needs to go do some fact checking on that, and I guarantee you there's no trace to it.
But I don't think that's the sole reason for.
It seemed like it was a pretty good sticking point at the start of this presentation.
Okay, thank you.
right? You know, it was. If it wasn't, it shouldn't have been presented that way, right? Another point is, it has been listed that there's 4 or 5 stipulations or criteria or whatever you want to call them for a fine dining establishment. Prior drafts to this have said those will be determined in the future. Have they been determined?
Yeah, they're in the ordinance.
They are now in the
Or
ordinance.
the draft ordinance have been in the draft.
Okay, sorry, I had not read the latest draft ordinance.
I would suggest you do that.
Okay, previously they had not been, so I don't know how you could advertise and pass an ordinance without those. That was my point to be said.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
but, I mean, other than that, I have not seen problems. And I think this is somewhat escalated beyond what it really is. You know, it's a pretty safe town, even at 2 a.m. And so, you know, a lot of people live in the city. The golf cart's a great thing. The walking distance is a great thing. People like to come out later at night. They have families. They put people to bed. They get babysitters. They come out on weekends. They enjoy the later at night, you know, establishments that exist. Without that, aside from the service industry people, you know, I think what's gonna happen is home sales are gonna go down, property values will go down, and the city's tax revenue is gonna go down because of all of that. So you need to take that into consideration also.
Thank you.
Gretchen Cody, 512 North Lakeview Avenue, Winter Garden. I wish some of you would do as we do. Part of our entertainment is coming to see what's going on in the city right here at the commission meeting. We try to come twice a month. That's how often it meets, the 2nd and 4th Thursday. There's nothing willy-nilly that I've ever seen this commission do. They put their hearts and souls into protecting the reputation and the livability, which is above par here in Winter Garden. And you all should be darn thankful this is where you live and that these are the people who are serving you. And forget willy-nilly, they work hard. Look how long she had to read that article. Do you think that took 2 minutes to do? Nothing willy-nilly. Thank you all for all you do.
We'll close the public hearing. Questions from the city commission?
What was the list of things that we're wanting to include in the second draft?
The list of changes that we made?
The staff recommendations,
Oh, these staff recommendations?
yes.
So these have not been made yet. These were all based on the discussions that we've been having with the restaurants and then the P&Z, but we would need to incorporate them. We would incorporate them for the second.
But one of them was the public record thing that Charlie mentioned. Personally, I like I want this to be, if we're gonna improve, I want a business to be able to call and not call for a police officer because they're doing the right thing and not be penalized, because we don't want you to not call because you're worried about penalized. So we should have a no strike for calling as part of it. I mean, I think that's fair because we want them to say, this person came in my business. Winter Garden PD, go tell. That's something that would have to happen for me to approve this. What were the other suggestions that we recommended?
So this slide actually shows them. To clarify that there was a discrepancy, to clarify that the new hours of sale don't apply to like package sales, so 7-Elevens or Wawa's, et cetera. Like we mentioned, include the option to provide an affidavit in lieu of the point of sale, again, to protect the the businesses that don't want to disclose kind of all their financials. Excuse me, sorry about that. And then a major section of it would be to redo that suspension of permit section, like you said, to make it clear that the culpability would be on, if it's a bad actor, the establishment would not be held responsible for a bad actor coming in and causing trouble, things like that. So we'll be more clear about that. in the next version.
All right. Any other questions?
I was gonna say, just my thoughts or maybe a suggestion is that we go ahead and approve the first reading of this ordinance incorporating the suggested changes that are mentioned here tonight, which would allow us the opportunity to go back, provide draft modifications to the ordinance between first and second reading, certainly provide copies to the businesses based upon the meeting that we had with them yesterday, which was very productive, and then that'll come back to you for the second.
And we'll get that out at least a week before the next meeting.
We already have.
So that they have time.
Point of order here, please.
No.
Yes,
No.
please.
No. So,
We already have a meeting scheduled for Monday with staff to finalize the drafts that Kelly started working on today, but we should get that out by hopefully Wednesday next week, so well in advance.
okay. Any questions from anybody else on the commission?
It's not really a question. We're not the only city to consider a measure like this ordinance. Orlando did something similar that took effect recently, and their quote was to ensure their city is a safe place and to be able to balance their city's resources. And it seems to be that's exactly what we're wrestling with too, but on a more compassionate, personal scale, because we're smaller and we know our business owners and we want them to succeed, all of them. There's been a lot of misunderstanding too, maybe perhaps because we've had several revisions. But you wouldn't have to close at midnight, you'd be able to stay open until 2. And if you approached the state and obtained your license as a restaurant, then in good faith, you should be able to have food. So they've even made concessions that could be, pre-prepared and just warmed up. So that was just my thoughts. I think we might have, liability by knowing some of these things, and not enforcing.
Okay. Anyone else?
City Attorney, do you have any things that, we heard some arguments from comments?
No, I think the staff's done a great job in taking this through and listening to the businesses. You heard from Charlie and Becky. I think they've done a good job of giving staff some good feedback from their perspective and some of the other folks. So I think the staff's done a good job. There's a little more work to do. It sounds like between tonight's version and the second reading. I know John and Kelly will make that happen. And to get it to the rest of us as soon as we can. Some of the arguments that were made about it violates the state constitution and state statutes, I think are a little not accurate. Clearly, alcohol is probably one of the most highly regulated industries in the state. There's Florida Supreme Court opinions that deal with it. Local governments do have significant authority to regulate matters pertaining to this. That are provided for in this ordinance. There are some things that the city does not, but this ordinance does not get into those that we cannot refine on good ground. If there tweaks that need to be made, we can, but from what I've seen so far, it's a solid ordinance. I think that John's suggestion and Kelly's suggestion that listen to the businesses that are affected and to the residents to tweak it a little bit is good. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, we need a motion.
I will move to approve with staff recommendations, and that we include the language that there will be no strike for calling Winter Garden PD, and it would be the intent that that is a good thing that these businesses do. End quote.
Okay, we have a motion with a second reading and public hearing on November the 14th.
Yes.
I thought I heard that. Thank you. We have a second. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. And thank everyone for the comments.
With regard to Florida, rezoning certain real property generally described as approximately 0.50 plus minus acres of land generally located at 210 South Dillard Street and 214 South Dillard Street, west of South Dillard Street, south of East Smith Street, north of East Maple Street, and east of South Woodland Street from City Seat Act 3, professional office districts and PCD planned commercial development as set forth in this ordinance, providing for certain PCD requirements and describing the development as the Dillard Street mixed-use building, PCD, and providing for severability, conflicts, and an effective date.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This is a request to rezone a 0.5 acre property located at 210 and 214 South Dillard Street. This property is currently zoned C3 Professional Office District and has a commercial future land use designation. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to PCD, Planned Commercial Development, to permit the redevelopment of the parcel with one mixed-use building comprised of 3,690 square feet of commercial area on the first floor and 2 residential units on the second. The site will feature 16 parking spaces, a dry pond or stormwater, and buffer landscaping. Staff has reviewed the application and recommends approval of 24-41.
Questions from the commission? Hearing none, this is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak.
They're all outside waiting to come back to you.
Yeah. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. We need a motion.
So moved, Mayor.
We move to approve the second reading public hearing on November 14th.
Yes.
Do we have a second? Second? Second. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Ordinance 24-42, 24-43, 24-44.
Yes, sir. Ordinance 24-42, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, providing for the annexation of certain additional lands generally described as approximately 0.26 plus minus acres located at 1253 Northwest Crown Point Road, west of Victoria Way, south of East Fuller's Cross Road, east of Northwest Crown Point Road, and north of Basie Du Lane into the City of Winter Garden, Florida, redefining the city boundaries to give the city jurisdiction over said property, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and ordinance 24-43, and ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, amending the future land use map of the Winter Garden Comprehensive Plan by changing the land use designation of real property, generally described as approximately 0.26 plus minus acres located at 1253 Northwest Crown Point Road, west of Victoria Way, south of East Fuller's Cross Road, east of Northwest Crown Point Road, and north of Basie Du Lane, from Orange County low-density residential to city low-density residential, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, and ordinance 24-44, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, rezoning real property generally described as approximately 0.26 plus minus acres located at 1253 Northwest Crown Point Road, west of Victoria Way, south of East Fuller's Cross Road, east of Northwest Crown Point Road, and north of Basie Du Lane, from Orange County A-1 Citrus Rural District to City R-1 Single Family Residential District, providing for severability, providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This is another request for annexation, future land use and zoning for 8.26 acre property located at 1253 Northwest Crown Point Road. If approved, this property would be annexed into the city, assigned a low-density residential future land use designation, and rezoned to R1 Single Family Residential District. After approval, the applicant intends to build a single-family house on the property and hook up to city services. So with that, staff recommends approval of ordinances 24-42, 43, and 44. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission?
You got a long line.
This is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. We need a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 24-42, 24-43, 24-44, the second reading and public hearing on November 14, 2024.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Ordinance 24-45.
Yes, sir. Ordinance 24-45, an ordinance of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, relating to water and wastewater utilities, amending the city's fee schedule to adopt revised water, sewer, reclaimed water, and irrigation utility rates and fees, authorizing a utility bill payment assistance program, providing for conflicts, codification, severability, and effective date.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. As Kurt said, this ordinance is to amend the fee schedule for the city's water, sewer, reclaimed water, and irrigation rates. These increases are being implemented to fund the required expansion and improvements of the city's wastewater treatment plant. The rate increases will also fund operating and maintenance of the facility. The ordinance will it will have implementation of increases on January 1, 2025, as well as October 1 each following year through 2029, and at that point it would revert to an annual index rate, which covers the cost of the $132.6 million project. There is another section at the end of it, which is a roundup. It's a residential utility bill assistance program that Laura is currently working on with United Way, and she plans to bring forward an agreement at the next meeting with that item. Staff recommends approval of ordinance 24-45, and I'm more than happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Just to let you know, we spent an hour and a half before this meeting with questions, and we spent the last year and a half, 2 years, with questions working on this. So this is not something we're looking at and just passing quickly this evening or tonight.
It should be illegal to have state requirements and no funding for what they require.
Yep.
Steve, for the public that doesn't know that, would you outline the state requirements that are driving this need now?
Our engineer of record estimated that 75% of the cost of this construction are due to the advanced water treatment requirements. So that would be $99.5 million of the 132.6.
And our aging infrastructure is not capable of meeting those requirements, so necessitating the need to do this now.
Correct.
And the construction timeline, we have to start the process of getting bonding and funding for it.
Yes, sir.
That was as short as I can wrap up that 2 hours.
That's about it. That's a good job. Yep. Questions? This is a public hearing. We will open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak. We'll close the public hearing. We need a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 245 with the second reading and public hearing for November 14th at 6:30 p.m.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 2445. We have a second. We have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Ordinance 24-46.
46, an ordinance of the city of Winter Garden, Florida, amending the code of ordinances of the city of Winter Garden, Florida, amending chapter 78 utilities to create a new section 78-3 natural gas installation, providing for installation of natural gas lines within new platted subdivisions and replats of existing subdivisions, providing for developer payment of costs of installation and materials, providing for cost sharing for gas main extensions under certain conditions, providing for construction of installation and main extension, providing for easements and permits, providing for ownership and maintenance, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Ordinance, excuse me, I'm talking too much tonight. Ordinance 24-46 was drafted in conjunction with our partners at the Lake Apopka Natural Gas District, would amend City of Winter Garden Code 78 utilities to create a new section 78-3 natural gas installation. The new section would require all new platted subdivisions and replat of existing subdivisions over 5 lots to install natural gas lines and facilities if gas mains are already available or within 100 feet of the property. So the reason for this is so city residents have more options available to them to meet their energy needs. Because of that, city staff recommends approval of ordinance 24-46. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission? You've been sitting here a long time. Did you want to say anything, sir?
I'll just answer questions if they come up, man.
Okay. I want to say, you've been sitting here, I thought you might want to say, hey, this is a public hearing. We will open a public hearing if anyone wishes to speak. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. We need a motion.
I'll make that motion. Motion to approve ordinance 24-46 with a second reading and public hearing November 14th.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank y'all. Ordinance 24-47.
Yes, sir. Ordinance 24-47, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Winter Garden, Florida, amending sections 2-342 and 2-343 of Chapter 2, Article Roman 6, Division 2 of the Winter Garden City Code, amending the criteria for an amount of financial assistance to needy senior citizens on their monthly utility billing, providing for severability, codification, and an effective date.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This ordinance updates the current ordinance to amend the discount from a flat rate discount to a percentage discount. This will allow the discount to index with the base bill. So we're recommending to update that, and also recommending to update the household income criteria from a flat rate to a percentage. And with that, staff recommends approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from the commission? Yes, sir.
It also lowers the time period for qualifying from 5
Right,
years to 12
from 5 years to 12 months.
That's right.
I guess a clarification on the percentage as far as income.
For the income, instead of a flat rate, we are indexing it with the federal index, and it's 60% above poverty level, which is in comparison with what Orange County provides.
Going from $35 flat rate to 90%.
Correct.
So I think it's probably a good thing for our people in need.
I was gonna say this very much complements the rate increase that most families can afford and will allow those that can't to have a path forward.
Right.
It's a good thing, so thank you.
So that's a motion, Mayor.
Well, not yet, it's not. It's a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing if anyone wishes to speak. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Now we need a motion.
Move to approve ordinance 2447, the second reading hearing on November 15th.
We have a second. Motion is second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation to approve service contract extension with Aspire Health Partners. Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. We currently have a contract with Aspire Health Partners to provide a social services component partner with our police department. I will say since '21, it's been very successful. This amount of $99,469 is in the budget, and I'm requesting to approve the services to extend the current contract for another year and to allow the city manager to sign the contract. I would like to add that since February of this year, they've taken in 150 clients and had about 110 success stories from them. And they primarily deal with the poverty-stricken, the homeless, mentally ill, and those that suffer substance abuse. And if you recall, just prior, we actually hired the Aspire representative, Ebony, who's on our staff, and she's been very successful. Coming back around, I would request the commission to allow the city manager to sign a renewal contract with Aspire Partners.
So Chief, you're doing something that's very progressive by allowing a third party to help your police officers with these mentally ill or sometimes substance abuse people, so that it's more of a citizen initiative.
Correct. See, the police officers, since we're out there 24/7, we deal with people right now, and the problem is right now. And the police officers, they have very little resources at their hands, and you can't arrest your way out of these problems in society. So the ability to partner with Aspire and our social services component of the police department gives us a better response for the community and a better outcome and a lower call for service, because those people that have been successfully dealt with, hopefully they won't need us unless it's just a social call.
That would be great, sir. We need a motion.
Motion to approve recommendation for a contract extension with Aspire Health Partners.
We have a second. We have a motion, we have a second.
Barely.
We won't pick one. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Agreement with Orange County School Board.
Yes, sir. Orange County School Board, we have currently 8 SROs in our campuses and a supervisor in addition. This contract is proposed for the year 24-25 school year, and we will be compensated $72,000 per officer and $72,000 for the supervisor for our schools. We have 7 schools. Lakeview Middle has 2 officers assigned, and that's a new position this year because of the activity out there at Lakeview Middle, which is required. I will say that the school board would prefer a 3-year contract. that the majority of the cities are opting out of the 3-year deal because the second and third year in their proposal does not really take into account much of an increase. And with the inflation the way it is, we would like to just recommend the 1 year.
Agreed. Any motion,
Well, is that indicative of middle schools, 2 resource officers?
It's actually been my experience, Mayor, that sometimes the middle schools cause more problem than the high schools, because the middle school kids haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah.
The high school kids want to be there with their social group. The middle schoolers haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We need a motion.
So moved.
We need a second. Motion is second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor Commissioners.
Recommendation to approve request for qualification rankings and awards. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. On August 9th, 2024, the city received 7 submittals in response to its request for qualifications for professional planning services consultants. On September 16th, 4 of the firms submitted supplemental materials as a response to an addendum. And the selection committee has completed the review of the submittals and has ranked the consultants as follows, Number 1, Inspire Placemaking Collective. Number 2, Able City East. Number 3, RVI Planning and Landscape Architecture. Number 4, Chen Moore and Associates. Number 5, Health. Number 6, Calvin Giordano and Associates. And number 7, Land Design. Staff recommends approval of the RFQ 24-005 rankings and awarding continuing services contracts for professional planning services to the top 2 ranked firms, which were Inspire Placemaking Collective and Able City East. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the commission? Need a motion?
So moved.
Need a second?
That was a second. That was on, raise your hand. That was a second.
I thought you were going to do both. We have a motion, we have a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, motion carried unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation to sign reuse main extension of resizing agreement. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Burger King located at 13500 West Colonial Drive redeveloped the existing site, which included extending the reclaimed water main up the east side of the property to the corner of State Road 50 and Daniels. The city of Winter Garden requested that the developer increase the pipe size from 8 to 12 inches in diameter in order to use this pipe as a regional supply line. The city has agreed to pay for the difference in cost between the required 8-inch and the 12-inch piping. Staff would recommend signing the reuse main extension oversizing agreement and paying Adizar Orlando LLC $7,015.46 for the increased capacity in the reclaim main. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good job.
Any questions from the commission? We could deduct from the 850 they got out of us. Huh? Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion. We have a motion, we have a second. Motion is second, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Recommendation to declare vehicles and equipment as surplus. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here again to highlight several pieces of equipment and vehicles that we have here in the city that is either become inoperational or decommissioned for a few months now. So I'm here seeking your authorization to sell those vehicles as surplus.
Any questions from the commission? We get our use out of it. We need a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night.
Matters from citizens of Winter Garden.
Oh.
Did we have to do this, man?
Should we vote on this?
I think so. Start my 3 minutes.
No,
Bob Buchanan.
Your 3 minutes started when you got up from the chair.
Well, if you want
There's
me
a
to
minute
do
and a half.
if you want me to do it real quick, I will, or we can. Just observation, and that I think this and it's not for or against, but I think this liquor deal is extremely important. It's about like the mall and some other things. I'm asking the commission to consider getting information out to the public, because you know, they don't all read the, social media, they don't all do, and I think you ought to figure out some way to get out this information to all the citizens and not just a handful, not just with Chamber of Commerce and the business owners and stuff like that.
City Manager, we might need to push through some.
Thank you. You're right, because I'll talk to 4 or 5.
Next door neighbors.
It's gonna change. Anyone else? Matters from city attorney.
Pass, Mayor. Thank you.
City manager.
I will be very brief, Mayor. This time 2 weeks ago, we had a pretty good idea of the devastation that Hurricane Milton had created, and obviously I want to commend all of our staff for the preparation prior to the storm. Had the opportunity to ride the storm out here at City Hall, spend a lot of time in the EOC, ate some terrible food, but I enjoyed every minute of it, and every one of our citizens should feel extremely confident and proud in knowing that we have the best people here in the city of Winter Garden rendering services to them. Shortly after the storm, we mobilized debris removal efforts, and I'm pleased to report as of yesterday, we had about 12,000 cubic yards of debris removed from the city right-of-way, which represents about 90% of the city. We will start winding down some of that effort so we can give some of our folks in Public Works a little bit of a break, because they've been going nonstop pre-storm, post-storm, and certainly with this recovery. So we're gonna let them start taking some time off and start to recover from that as well. And then we'll do another full evaluation of the city to see where we are with the amount of debris, and hopefully be able to wrap that process up pretty quick. With that, I just want to announce that obviously the Halloween experience is ongoing. Started October 18th through the 31st. We have the Winter Garden POW Donut Dash 5K that is set for September 2nd from 8 a.m. to 11. Health and Harvest Fest at the Winter Garden Farmers Market on November 2nd from 8 to 1. And Craft Fair at Jesse Brock on Saturday, November 9th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and that's all I have.
The commission meetings, Thanksgiving, and.
One more item, most important item. We also would like to make a recommendation to cancel regular city commission meetings for November 28th and December 26th.
Okay, we have a motion for that?
Yes. So moved, Mayor.
We have a second? We have a motion, that was easy getting. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carried unanimously. Commissioner Sharman.
Gretchen, thank you for always coming every 2 weeks, and anybody that comes on a regular basis. And then thank you to our staff. I will tell you that that was not fun for them to put that together, but you did a good job. You guys did a good job on that ordinance. So, and the good thing about an ordinance is it can be undone, redone, made better. That's why we don't do charter changes that often. AKA constitutional amendments.
Just want to thank the staff for all their hard work, for all that you guys do.
What's your I've had that before.
I know.
So, thank you to staff for all, the heavy lifting, the hard work you always do. Everybody involved with the EOC, and Hurricane, Rich in Public Works, Laura in Parks. We just really appreciate you guys. That's it.
My comments are exactly that. Not so much for our contractors, but for our city staff, I want to thank John, I want to thank Steve for everything, Laura and Rich and all of our staff. When you look around our town, it's really unbelievable how clean this town is, and the hours that they put in to ensure that we as residents live here and live in a good, clean place. And it was a lot of work, but I just want to know that all the people that really talked to, nobody was fussing. They were just, asking. It was mainly because our our contractors, with one working and four looking at their cell phones. You know, they're not like Winter Garden employees, but I want to thank you, Steve, and everyone, our employees for all their hard work. And with that, we'll adjourn.